Okay, so that's the end of our announcements. We're going to now switch gears. We're going to have a short offering video to set the tone for the sermon that my wife, Pastor Adonia, is going to be giving. So please sit back and enjoy this offering video.
I keep fighting voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie that tells me I will never measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and every low? Remind me once again just who I am, because I need to know. Ooh, oh, you say I'm loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. And you say I am held when I am falling short. And when I don't belong, oh, you say I am yours. And I believe, oh, I believe what you say of me. I believe the only thing that matters now is everything you think of me. In you I find my worth, in you I find my identity. Ooh, oh, you say I'm loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I'm weak. And you say I am held when I am falling short. When I don't belong, oh, you say I am yours. And I believe, oh, I believe what you say of me. Oh, I believe. Taking all I have and now I'm laying it at your feet. You'll have every failure, God. You'll have every victory. Ooh, oh, you say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short. When I don't belong, oh, you say I am yours. And I believe, oh, I believe what you say of me. I believe, oh, I believe, yes, I believe what you say of me. I
Good morning. Isn't that a beautiful song? We didn't dismiss the Sunday school, so if there is Sunday school happening for you guys, you're welcome to go. Thank you so much for being here and being so quiet through all the announcements and everything. Have fun. I love this song. I keep dreaming of the day when we can perform that live here in the church. I just think it'd be so awesome. I need to take a lot of vocal classes before we get to that point, though. But it's so wonderful to be here this morning. It's so great to see all of you. Thank you so much for taking this time to be here with your brothers and sisters and to be here and invite God into your life and your week each week. We're almost done with our series based on our vision statement. Isn't that amazing? It's been about a year. We've been going through all the points, and we just have 1 or 2 messages left to this series, and we're going to wrap it all up. But our series is based on our last point. Our series is Inheriting the Legacy and Building the Future, and it's based on this last point from our vision, that we are a community that embodies the legacy of living for the sake of others and building the kingdom of heaven here on earth that our founders, Reverend and Mrs. Moon, whom we call the true parents, have passed on to us. So today I'm going to be focusing on this point of living for the sake of others. So some of you have heard this term a lot. And some of you might be like, what does that mean? I feel like people in our faith are very familiar with this. It's kind of a core, it's like the underlying tone or current behind everything that we do. And it's a phrase that we use a lot. It's kind of like the peace starts with me, or do unto others as you would have do. You know, these phrases that we're so familiar with that we don't even think about them anymore. It might be a little bit cliche, or some of you might feel like, don't tell me how to live my life. But I found that although the concept of living for God or living for a greater good is often touched on in other faith traditions, it's not so central or core. And in some conversations that I've had with friends who aren't part of our faith, when I talk about living for the sake of others and I start to describe what it would be like or how it works and how it makes our life so much better, they're kind of mind blown. So it's actually so deep. And whether or not this is old news, or maybe you're like, what does this mean? Today I want to share the basic concept of what is living for the sake of others, hopefully paint a bit of a picture of what that is, and also maybe add a new perspective to it if you feel like you've heard it all before. So I'm going to start just with this excerpt from the Divine Principle, one of the main texts in our faith. All entities have dual purposes. In God's ideal, there cannot be any individual purpose which does not support the whole purpose. Nor can there be any whole purpose that does not guarantee the interests of the individual. The infinite variety of beings in the universe form one vast organic body interwoven by these dual purposes. So, it's a little bit of like technical words here, dual purposes. But the idea is that everything in creation has an individual and a whole purpose. The individual purpose is that everything needs to maintain itself. Everything needs to survive, right? In order to survive, whether if it's a plant, it needs to absorb sunlight. It needs to take in water and nutrients from the soil in order to grow, in order to exist, and in order to reproduce and continue. Animals also need food, water, shelter. They need to reproduce, and that also includes humans. We need those things. So we have a purpose to satisfy those needs in our life. However, the reason why an entity needs to maintain itself is to fulfill some greater purpose than just for itself. I would say that flowers exist to add beauty to our world, their fragrance. They also exist so that bees can pollinate them, so that we can have food to eat. I'm into bees. If you don't know, I have a beehive. It's right over there. I'm all about the bees. Plants exist, right, to continue to grow, but they also exist to feed other plants, animals, and people. And I would say that people exist. Our whole purpose is to exist to give love and joy to one another and to God. This is our whole purpose. So I actually, when I started looking into this, I found so many beautiful quotes from the Bible, from Divine Principle, from the words of our true parents. And I'm going to share quite a few today, more than I usually do, but I feel like it's the best way to paint the picture of what living for the sake of others is. And then I'm going to go more into what that means in our life. How do we deal with the situations in our life where it's sometimes hard to know if should I do this for myself? Is doing this for myself selfish? Those kind of things. So I'm going to start with a quote from the Bible. This is from 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 24 through 26. But God has put the body together, giving greater honor to the parts that lacked it, so that there should be no division in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. In this particular quote, he's describing a body, but what Jesus is actually talking about here is the body of Christ, or us, the church, brothers and sisters. So you could read it from that perspective. God has put us, humanity, together as a family, giving greater honor to the parts that lacked it. There should be no division in this body among us. We should have equal concern for each other. If one of us suffers, whether or not we know it, we all suffer with that person. And if one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. I had a really interesting experience yesterday. The night before last, I had a very short dream at the end of the night. I was dreaming that we were doing a couples program here at the church. And all these people from my past that I hadn't seen in years were showing up for this couples program. And one of them was this boy from high school that I knew. We were in marching band together. He played the snare drum, and I play the bassoon, very sophisticated instrument. But in marching band season, I play the crash cymbals. So he was kind of like a little brother to me. I really enjoyed my band sessions. And I hadn't even really thought of him since I graduated from high school, but he showed up at my couples program in my dream. So I found him on Facebook yesterday morning, and I was like, hey, I dreamed about you. It's kind of random, but how are you doing? And I was a little hesitant to hear how he might respond, because I had heard that he actually had a baby like the year after I graduated. He was just a junior in high school. And I know that that's a tough situation to be in. How do you're still growing into maturity yourself while you're trying to raise a child. But actually we had a wonderful messaging conversation throughout the day yesterday. And I learned that he and his girlfriend, who became his wife, have had 4 children. They're still together. They've created a beautiful, beautiful family. And I rejoiced with him. I was so happy to see the happiness and success of an old friend of mine. So I connected with that today. Here's another quote. The order of existence in the universe is rooted in acting for the sake of others. The world of true peace, true love, and the true ideal is both the ideal of God's creation and the desire of humankind. Therefore, the origin of happiness and peace lies in living for the sake of others. I really like this one, guys. You might be thinking, Reverend Moon, your ideas sound good, but I'm afraid you are too idealistic. How could a totally unselfish world be possible? Anybody else out there thinking, I don't know. But let's look at the practical side of it. Let me ask you another question. Suppose there is someone who truly loves you, 100% unselfishly. Oh, you are a happy person. You are bubbling with joy because of the knowledge that someone loves you so much. You want to give something back to that person to show that you love him too, isn't that right? Yeah? Would you be stingy about returning that love so that you discounted 40 or 50% of the amount of love that you receive and keep that in your pocket, only returning 50% to him? Or would you like to outlove that person and try to give more love than he gives you? What is your reaction? Has anybody experienced that, or is this totally hypothetical? What is your reaction? I know your answer. You want to give more. You want to outlove that person. It is human nature never to be stingy about love. So when there is someone who truly loves you, you always want to do more for that person. You want to make him happier. Do you agree with me? An unselfish deed always brings an unselfish reward. Isn't that so? Your deeds of love will never be lost. When I love with 100% of unselfish love, then that love will not only reach its destination, but it will also bring back 100% love, plus interest. This is when interest is a good thing. Love forms a circular motion of give and take, and each time it brings back more love. Isn't that awesome? One more here. So once you begin to live according to God's way here on earth, you are already living in heaven. Did we talk about this the other week? There are no boundaries between the life you live here on earth and the afterlife. This is why Jesus said that the kingdom of God is in the midst of you. You can live in the kingdom of heaven right now, right here. Life for God is living for others, making one great circle of service. For example, I serve my family serves the purpose of society, and society is a servant to the nation. The nation is a servant to the world. The world, in turn, is to serve God. And God lives solely for you and me, for his children. So I hope that even though we went through those kind of quickly, that it kind of paints a picture or gives you a feeling of what it would be like to live not just for my sake, but for the sake of others, for the sake of God. And that it's not just giving, but that there's a reciprocation. That actually, when we give 100% of love, we will receive 100% of love, plus interest. So, living for the sake of others is the basis for healthy relationships, a healthy society, and actually, as it mentioned, the kingdom of heaven here on earth. I really like this little section here about how I serve my family. The family serves the purpose of society, to the nation, to the world, to God, and it's all returned in God's love. I feel like I can taste this. I feel really blessed that I have been able to be not just a healthy individual, but that I have been able to be in a relationship with my husband as a wife. I've learned a little bit of what it is to live for the sake of others in a relationship with my husband. And then to have children, to live for the sake of my family, putting my family's needs above my own needs. and that my family exists in a situation where we can serve a larger community. I hope that sometimes you feel that we're here for you, and hopefully more than once. But it's not always easy, because sometimes we feel like, well, but what about my needs? I know you husbands and wives might be like giving your side glances to each other. Sometimes Mike and I are, we both have needs, right? And we both, and actually there are valid needs. Like we mentioned, in order for our individual purpose, we have an individual purpose, and those needs need to be filled. We need food, water, shelter. We also need love. But how do we put the needs of somebody else above our own? I found that it's important to express, this is some relationship advice here. It is okay to express your needs to your spouse. Sometimes we hear these words like living for the sake of others, and we feel like, oh, I should just give, and never ask for anything, there's like truth to that, but it's actually okay to say, hey, Mike, I'd like you to be more romantic sometimes. That's my thing. But I shouldn't wait for him to be romantic before I take care of him. I shouldn't wait to have my needs filled first before I do something for somebody else. It's okay to express your needs, but don't hesitate to give. That's what I found, at least for us. And he does the same. I can't take all credit. He does the same. But that's the foundation that our family is built on. And if you've had kids, you know those are demanding. They have lots and lots of needs. And they won't hesitate. Sometimes our spouses might hesitate to tell you a need. Your kids won't hesitate to tell you their needs. And sometimes it's hard when you feel like you didn't get enough sleep, or you could use just a little bit of peace and quiet to have to constantly fill needs. But over time, you build something beautiful. And then that beautiful family can encompass others into their family. And that becomes the basis of the community, the society that serves a nation in the world, and becomes beautiful to God. So, going back to the beginning of this individual and whole purpose, the nature of the relationship between these two purposes is very important. And creation, excluding human beings, okay? Creation does it very well, right? The plants, the animals, the weather, everything is in this reciprocal relationship, right? Do animals complain because they have to sacrifice for their babies? Do the plants complain when they have to get eaten by other animals? This happens, right? There's the individual and the whole purpose, but there's no struggle about it in the natural world. But part of the challenge of human life is learning to develop the proper relationship between the individual and the whole purpose. We're the ones who struggle with that, right? So there's a buzzword today. I see this all the time on Facebook, and the word is self-care. Have you guys noticed that recently? Self-care. It's okay to eat your chocolate cake, girl. Or, sometimes it's more meditative. And also there's a lot about doing what makes you happy, right? I see a lot of memes about if there's a toxic relationship, you don't need to deal with that. Find your happiness. And sometimes I feel like there's a conflicting message there. Do you guys ever think about self-care? Sometimes we really feel like we need it, but sometimes it can feel selfish. Some people feel that they're giving, and then they have absolutely nothing left for themselves, and they need some self-care. So how do we find this balance? How do we find this balance between my individual purpose and taking care of myself and living for the sake of others? So is self-care the opposite of living for the sake of others? Does anybody have an idea how it might fit into living for the sake of others? Self-care is actually crucial to living for the sake of others. You may have heard, you can't give what you don't have. If you're not experiencing joy in life, it's very hard to give life-giving joy to others. Also, each person is an individual embodiment of God's truth. We learned about that in the divine principle. Each one of us resonates with God in a unique way. We each have a calling that's unique to us, and we all have passions, things that inspire us and excite us, and that may not be the same as my husband, or might not be the same as my neighbor. So, is it wrong to pursue my passions if I'm not, is that opposite of living for the sake of others? I had someone ask me once, my grandson is graduating high school and he wants to go on to get this degree, and but I kind of feel like he should be doing something for others. And I said, well, what is he going to do with his degree? And he said, well, he's going to be a doctor. And I was like, well, don't you think that maybe that has something to do with the sake of others? Yeah. Actually, I believe that the things that truly make us happy, our passions, God gives those to us. And when we pursue them, then we can give life to others through those passions. And when we take care of ourselves well, we can do better to take care of others. But it's like a fine line. It can easily go into eating chocolate cake right now would really make me happy. Actually, a second piece would make me even happier. And that snooze button is my best friend. But I've found that if it's just for me, if it's just to make me happy, I'm never truly satisfied after that piece of cake, or after that nap, or I finally get some alone time away from the kids. But if I'm just trying to satisfy my own personal, only for me needs, I'm not actually satisfied. And I always want something else because I didn't cut it. And it kind of becomes me. Looking for more happiness and not being able to find it. So the point is that the self-care and the following of passions is actually so that we can do more for others. This is a quote by Reverend Moon. By now, we know why God created man. We know that God is the subject and we are his objects. Whenever there is a subject and an object, there is the possibility of two different kinds of relationships between the two. One is a selfish relationship, where one dominates the other for the benefit of himself. The other is an unselfish relationship, where one gives himself wholeheartedly for the benefit of the other. So when we think of these two kinds of relationships, which one would be God's choice? God knows that a selfish relationship is self-destructive. Nothing can flourish based on selfishness. Selfishness eventually leads to self-extinction. God knows that an eternal and prospering relationship can never come about through selfish taking. So God's choice was to have an unselfish relationship. He built the universe upon the base of unselfishness. So everything in the universe is designed with this harmony. The natural world follows it automatically. However, we humans, we have this struggle sometimes. We have the one side of ourselves that resonates with God and our original mind, and that wants to help others, that wants to live for something great, feels called to be a source of goodness in the world. When I say those words, I feel like there's something in each person that's like, yes, I want to be that. I want to be a light to my neighbors. I want to help the people who are in need. I want to be somebody who creates something good in this world. But then there's also the side of us that just doesn't want to get uncomfortable. It's not necessarily like, oh, no, I want to be selfish. I want everybody to serve me. There are a few people who've found their way into that mindset, but most people want to do good. But there is a side of us that doesn't want to get uncomfortable, doesn't want to face the awkwardness, doesn't want to face adversity. It doesn't really want to go out of our way to help others. Maybe if it's convenient. Oh, look, there's a person with a sign. I'm actually right next to him. There happens to be $1 here. Okay, that's convenient. But do we go out of our way to help other people? There's a side of us that likes to be a bit lazy. Actually, to be really honest, there's a side in each of us that hopes that somebody else will notice me and my needs and fill my needs. Yeah? Nobody else feels that way? I feel that way. Can't you see I'm working so hard, Mike? Can't you see the kids are going crazy right now and I could really use a little help? But I don't want to tell him because that sounds selfish. I just want him to notice and take care of me. I'm being real here, guys. This is me. Oh, I turned it off. Maybe there's something there that you can resonate with. Okay, good. All right. We have that side of us. But it's kind of like a catch-22 because we want to be taken care of, but when that is our purpose, we actually find ourselves being limited, unsatisfied, and unable to do the things that we really want to do. This is another really great quote. When you are a selfish person, there are many layers of confinement because you are blocking yourself. You feel helplessly confined by the law. But as soon as you are determined to live not for yourself, but for others, there will be no boundaries to confine you. Last Christmas, there was just a lot going on last Christmas season. You know, we had our church Christmas parties, and there was things going on at school, and there was presents to buy for everybody, and family photos we had to take, which we have to then turn into a card, which we have to print, you know, and then we have to find the addresses for everybody, and it gets to be overwhelming sometimes. And I think I need to reevaluate how I do Christmas sometimes. But I remember last year I found myself feeling quite overwhelmed by all the things surrounding Christmas. But I found myself thinking about the other women, ladies in our community, the young women, and I realized we haven't gotten together, haven't done anything together in months. And I just had this thought, we should do a Christmas party. We should do a little gift exchange and just have fun together. And automatically, my more selfish, logical mind was like, nope, you have too much to do. When are you going to have time to organize that? When are you going to have time to clean the house? When are you going to have time to make the refreshments and stuff? But I was so happy I listened to my mind that wanted to do something for others. And I found that despite all the stuff going on, there was no boundaries to confine me. And I found a way to do it, and it was awesome. But that's what happens when we want to do something for others. There's actually not limits on what we can do when it comes out of our original mind and heart. And you think that by expending the energy, that in doing that, along with all the other stuff that I felt I had to do, that I would have less energy, but actually inspired me about what is the spirit of giving. What is love? And how do we share it? That was a good memory for me. This is from the Bible, Philippians 2, verses 3 through 7. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who, being in the very nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. Actually, Mike gave a talk on a servant of servants just last week. And I realized that all these quotes that I'm finding are kind of tying together our whole vision point about the kingdom of heaven on earth and living for the sake of others and becoming a servant of servants. These actually all tie together to become the legacy that Reverend and Mrs. Moon have left for us. And they all are connected to each other in how we live our life. So, simplified, living for the sake of others is hard to just put in general words, but I believe is the division between selfishness and unselfishness. Two people can be doing the same thing in their life. There can be two doctors. There could be two pastors. There could be two teachers. And we can have the same things and I'm teaching the same lessons, doing the same surgeries, giving the same sermons. But if we do it for recognition or the money or my own ego and pride that I did a good job, what we'll find is that there's not actually real satisfaction in that way of life. But two people can be doing the exact same things, but doing it with a hope and desire that they're giving life. Like in actuality, if you're a doctor, you're giving life to people. We're giving spiritual life through our messages. That as a teacher, that in giving something, you're giving your students tools for the life, and you're really concerned about the welfare of their future. Then you will find that your life is rewarding in whatever it is that you're doing. I do think it is important to structure your life in such a way that it makes it easier to live for the sake of others. If you're on a career path where you make money by jilting others or taking advantage of others, you might want to reevaluate, But actually, most paths that we can take in our life are ways that we can live for the sake of others. And what defines it starts in myself, whether it is for my sake and my personal benefit, if I'm willing to take advantage of others for my sake, or if I'm willing to give, and maybe even at my own expense sometimes, for the sake of others. You would think that by living for others, that by giving out, that there would be less for me. I would be left depleted. But when it's genuine, you can actually be overly blessed by giving. And that this is where true happiness is found. So actually, at the root of everything, you may have listened to lectures on the divine principle, you may have heard all of our sermons. This is it. We just started a new growth class for our new members, and we were talking with Dr. Hentrick about it. And he said, I just want them to know that this is it. Things about learning divine principle, or learning how to pray, or learning about our traditions, or learning about reading God's words, those are all good, but just for the sake of praying, or just for the sake of reading, or just for the sake of doing the traditions, there's not a purpose there. The purpose behind all of that is becoming a person who lives for others. And that is actually where our true happiness is found. What are we going to take with us when we go? Are we going to take our pride? Are we going to take our medals or our diplomas on the wall? It's not bad to have those things. But the legacy that we leave behind is when we live for others. And very cliche way to end, but it's actually in giving that we receive. So I'm going to leave you guys to contemplate on that this week. There's a lot there, but and in some ways, I want to reach out to you and I want to be like, okay, call to action. Do something this week to live for the sake of others. But when I really think about it, what I really want you to do what you're already doing and examine first, before you do something big. First examine, with what motivation am I doing the things that I'm already doing? And when you can find a way to turn things for the sake of my neighbor, for the sake of my family, for the sake of this stranger, then you can find the opportunities to do something great when they come along. So please join me in prayer. Heavenly Parent, good morning. Thank you so much for another beautiful morning, another day on this beautiful, beautiful earth that you created with love and unselfish giving for us. God, we are the sometimes unknowing recipients of your unconditional love. And we know that you also, just as we have needs, you don't have the same needs as us. You don't need to eat or sleep, but you do need love. And I know that you don't want to say it. You don't want to impose yourself on us, but I pray that we can become the people who recognize what an incredible love that we have been given in our lives, and that we can become inspired, that from the bottom of our hearts we can be excited to return that love. And we return that love not just by praying to you, telling you that we love you, but by expressing that love to each and every one of your children on this earth. God, there are many people who haven't tasted what that love is like. And that's a very hard place to be in, not knowing if love is even real. But I believe that each one of us here has tasted that love. I hope that each person has that one person, as we read, who loves them 100%. They just want to give back. And that we can become that person to others who love with 100% and just sparks a reaction of love in others. That is truly, as Father said, that is truly how the kingdom of heaven comes. We can experience it now in the midst of us. Thank you, God, for your unconditional love. We love you. We invite you into our hearts and our lives this week. I invite you into the most intimate, sometimes quiet, insignificant moments in our life. And I pray that we can take that moment, pause, and examine. We know if we're doing something for ourselves. for our own gain or if we're doing it for others. And I pray we can just take those moments to examine and we can change each moment, each opportunity for good. Please be with each one of our brothers and sisters as we go out this week. Please protect them and bless them. And I offer this prayer in my name, Michael and Doña Hendrick, Blessed Central Family. Amen and adieu. Thank you. Have a wonderful week.